So today's class is Photography Made Easy, Family Portraits. I chose this topic because as we get closer to the holiday season, even though you're not going to be seeing as much of our family, you want to be able to capture those moments that you have together with your family. So we're going to break down some of the variables that you're going to be changing around whenever you take portraits, and give you guys some examples and then show you some pictures that I've taken and kind of walk through the process of that. So to start off, portrait photography is generally what you say whenever your purpose of your picture is to capture the emotions of the subject. Um, Oftentimes, many people just think, oh, if it's a portrait, that means that it's in a session or it's in a studio. But actually, it's all about the emotion. You know, you don't take portrait photographies of football players during their game, but you can take a portrait photography of the fans as they're really, in elation. It really has to do with a lot of very still photos. None of these photos are really in motion. It's all about the subject in a very controlled environment, or sometimes uncontrolled, depending on the type of portrait you're using. And the three commonly adjusted variables in portrait photography are going to be your background, the subject's pose, and the lighting that you show, both either on the background or on the subject themselves. So we're going to start just going down the list. Background. The common misconception is that a portrait session is always going to be in a studio, but more often than not, portrait sessions are done in your own home, in places of work, outside, or even on a busy street. Not the best location for a portrait photography, but there are lots of people who model right there in Times Square. Like I said, portrait is all about the emotion of the subject. So as long as the background is not too detracting from the subject, your background can be anything. When I say backgrounds that don't detract from the subject, if you have a small child in the middle of a carnival, you want to try to find a place where when you take a picture of the child, there's kind of like an aura of calmness around the child that separates it from the craziness of the carnival. If you want to take a picture of a child right in front of a Ferris wheel, it's best to have the Ferris wheel off to the side or completely in the background rather than having the kid right in front of the Ferris wheel and having all the lines and the colors kind of just radiating from the subject, which ultimately just steal the eyes of the viewer away from the subject and towards the background, which is not what you want. Clashing colors and orientation of straight lines. Clashing colors is really simple. You don't want to take a picture of a kid in a red shirt in the middle of a big red field. And additionally, you don't want to take a picture of a kid in a red shirt in the middle of a Technicolor wonderland where too much stuff is going on. You want to make sure that the colors of the subject are going to complement the colors of the background and just form together really nicely. And when I talk about orientation of straight lines, this is a big thing that my journalism teacher often drilled into me, is when you take a picture, you need to make sure that nothing is coming out from behind the subject. It could be something as simple as a telephone pole. It can be going back to our analogy or an example with the Ferris wheel, to have the lines of the Ferris wheel, you don't want them to really come out of the subject in places of focus. You can have a telephone pole, or you can have some big line like maybe the back of a bench come out halfway, midway the chest, because the focus of the subject is more often than not the face. You want to keep kind of that aura of calmness around the face so that things don't just come jutting out and you look like you have antlers, and then that's the only thing that the viewer looks at because that's what they look at. And I actually want to take a moment to step back a little bit in saying that in our previous classes, we talked a lot about the rule of thirds, and portraits is one of the big exceptions to the rule of thirds. Your focus is all about the subject. You can put the subject right in the middle and be really big, as long as you've played and you set up the background and the settings smartly. it won't matter whether or not the eyes kind of be drawn left or right, because there's only one subject in a portrait, whether that subject be one person or one family or the group of people. That, it's very clear when you set up your portrait photography that there is one subject. So kind of delving a bit more into background props. So a very common thing to see during the holidays is going to be say like a Christmas bench photo or Christmas photos in the back of a pickup truck. In those instances, the objects that you bring to the setting that are separate from the background, those are what we refer to as props. A prop can be a lot of things. More often than not, they're simply things that you brought in, but sometimes it can be the way you've changed the angle of your photo that creates and maybe makes one of these trees a prop versus part of the background. I lift off some examples here. A dog or a cat can be a prop. You can have the dog in your hand. You can have the dog just sitting next to you, but the dog or the cat is not the subject of the photo when you're using them as props. An object for your subject to lean on. So like yes.
So when you said like a Christmas tree, that could be the background. How would it be a prop?
So if you brought the Christmas tree closer to the subject and kind of, so like if you had a picture of a person that was kind of leaning next to the tree, or kind of you have them almost in the tree and you're taking a picture of them through the leaves, or they're partially obscured by the leaves, then that becomes more of a prop than a background. Okay. More often than not, it's when you bring the object closer to the focus of your portrait, it becomes more of a prop than a background. Ultimately, props are still background pieces. They're still not the subject. So like I was about to say, a tree that you're taking a picture in front of can be part of the background if the subject's not near the tree. But if they're leaning off the tree, kind of like arms crossed with their legs behind, as you see often in many graduation photos, then that tree becomes a prop and not a background because you're interacting with it. And then you can bring in things that, like you mentioned a Christmas tree. If you had a big wide open plain, like a field, and you just put a Christmas tree in the back where you brought this Christmas tree into this setting, you can consider that to be a prop because you are including it in the picture to set a theme. It still might be in the background, but you're using it to reinforce this theme of Christmas.
Okay.
And they're excellent way. Props are excellent ways to adjust your background and actuate your background to bring in more focus to the emotions. Name of the game when it comes to portraits, all about emotions, and your props are, humans just generally associate certain objects with certain times of the year. An Easter basket, you think family, you think candy, you think going out and running for the Easter baskets, all these kind of emotions that you can capture in your picture.
Got it.
Okay, so next up, pose. And while this is probably one of the easiest variables to change, it is also the most daunting because there is no limit, there's no end to the number of poses that you can do. There's no just generic, there are a lot of generic poses. You see a lot of I'm trying to think of the word, anniversary or engagement photos where you have the guy or one of the partners from behind hugging the other partner with with the head on the shoulders, stuff like that. Very common, but twirling around with your hands in each other, laughing. Posing is one of the biggest ways to change the emotions of the subject. In fact, I would say it's so crucial. If you don't focus on posing whenever you're doing portraits, you're not really doing portraits right. For most professionals, they have books, they have years of experience knowing what poses work well for each person. One pose can work really well for a tall brunette woman that doesn't work as well for a short blonde man. Poses they're different, and a good way, and I use this as well, is simply Google photography poses, find examples of pictures, and then show those examples to your family members, to your subject, and say, I want you to do this. That's gonna be the best way to get started when it comes to posing. You know, your poses are gonna be a lot about your body, but also a lot about your face. When you're posing, the angle of which you are tilting your head, whether you're looking at the cameraman, whether you're looking off into the distance, all vastly change the emotion of the picture. And you want to make sure that, you know, when you do a pose, it's not going to distract from the face of the subject. Unless that is your intent. Sarah, sometimes you can take pictures where your subject is facing away from you, and those are exemptions to the rule. But for the most part, you know, you want your face to be on kind of full view, and the poses just help differentiate and provide new angles to it. And so delving more into poses, we have viewpoints. So I like to take my portraits freehand, but I know a lot of photographers like to do tripods. Tripods are great, especially if you're in a studio, especially if you're when you're working with certain lighting, because it allows you to make more adjustments to the levels of your camera, having lower ISOs, lower wider apertures, slower shutter speed to help bring in more light to the picture, which helps you in editing afterwards. But additionally, you know, you should not be afraid to move around when you take pictures of your family portraits. Many people just set up a tripod, have your subject sitting on a bench, and you take pictures straight ahead, and that's it. That's that. But if you were to kind of move off to the right and have them look off, you know, just a little past you over your shoulder, you're going to get that nice side angle view, kind of bringing in a whole different background to it. And it takes no time at all. You don't have to ask the subject to do anything more than just turn their head when you walk around. And sometimes you don't even have to have them move at all. You just pose them when you're right in front, and then shift around to kind of get the best lighting, the best angle. Some people look better from the right than they do from the left, and you want to be sure to be able to capture that. But it's not just going left and right, taking a picture from below or above. Huge differences. I know my wife refuses to let me take a picture from below her eye line. She's just like, no. But if you have a gentleman who's sitting on a bench and you're trying to get a more serious outlook in your picture, you don't want to look directly at him. You might want to get below him while he's looking down, and you're going to have a nice kind of brooding mentality to that picture. A lot of a darker emotion come out just because you got below and you had more shadows that come from that angle as well. So don't be afraid to move around, you know, especially when it comes to digital photography. Taking an extra picture, you know, it doesn't cost anything. You're not, and we're no longer really in the world of film where you only have 35 tries per roll of film, and you know, once you're done, you have to reset everything, and you don't really know what you get. So with digital, you take a picture, you look at it, you try again, or you take all these pictures and then look at it afterwards. I've been doing 15-minute photo sessions for families this holiday, and I on average take about 250 pictures within that 15 to 20-minute segment.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm taking, because I have my shutter speed to take about 1 to 3 clicks per press, and I can hold it down and take a lot of pictures. And I do that because the more pictures you take, the better chance you are going to be able to capture a really good picture. You know, oftentimes you're going to be able to capture those perfect candid pictures as well, because you know, a lot about portraits is going to be candidness as well as the formalness of it as well. So now we're coming to lighting. While lighting is not as hard as poses, you know, it's not as daunting, it is a lot more difficult to get perfect. When you see many studio photography sessions of models, you know, you always see in the movies where the photographer is shouting at the model. They have 10 different people. They have lights coming in from all the angles, and the goal is to put it so that there's no shadows on the model's face. That's the ultimate goal whenever it comes to kind of like a studio portrait photography in terms of lighting, is that you want to eliminate all the shadows or control the shadows in the way that you want. But more often than not, for amateurs, it's going to be difficult. You maybe have a flash on your camera and that's it. And you really do not want to directly flash, like angle your flash at the subject, because more often than not, the flashes from your camera are very harsh. They're a very cold light because it's an LED white light, and it's going to create shadows on your background. It's going to create extra shadows on your subject's face. It's going to highlight imperfections on their face as well. Humans are just naturally slightly oily on their skin. There's nothing about it, and a flash captures all that. So you're going to see acne, you're going to see bumps, you're going to see everything. Instead of having a nice, just calm and typical face, you're going to be able to see everything. Just like when you get a brand new TV that's like 4K resolution, and you can see the actors sweating on screen that you couldn't see before, or you can see you can see the nose hairs, on their face. It's flash photography is very rare when it comes to portraits, but it can be done. And I want to go over that just in a second now. And the best way to utilize flash in an affordable way is through the use of a flash diffuser or a softbox. And I want to say I have one here. Yes, I'll be right back. Let me go grab my flash box so I can show you. Okay. All right, it was downstairs in my baby's room from all of our 3-month photography sessions. So I have an external flash on my camera. So this is what it looks like. It's nice and big. I can angle it left and right. It's a lot more control, because typically when you have a camera like a DSLR or even like a camera on your smartphone, it's right here and that's it. It's always angled directly at the subject. But sometimes you can get a good soft light through the use of a softbox. It's essentially just filtering the flash through a white little sheet. On the inside, it has reflective, kind of like aluminum foil, so that when the flash is inside, it's going to get bounced around until eventually it comes out the front. And at the front, it's you can kind of see my fingers through it. It's not a very thick coating. But it's just meant to diffuse and soften the light. My flash also comes with some extra little stuff you can throw on top of the light to kind of deflect it even more. And some diffusers aren't actually a box, they're just a little, you kind of have this, it bends in front. So as we were taking a picture, it's bent, so the flash hits this white background. It softens because it's going to be reflected off of this, but it's not a fully reflective surface, so it's going to soften out of it, and it's going to then direct it directly towards the subject. This gadget, I bought 2 of them off Amazon for $15. Very affordable. Now, there are very expensive ones. The bigger you get, the more expensive it is, but you're really not going to spend much more than $100, even if you are a very professional photographer. Now, they also have other stuff as well. You have a so to say, a reflector panel. You see them often whenever you see people taking portraits out on the streets. It's just big white circle, very similar to this, but it's nice and big, almost like you're going to use it to block out the sun in the front of your car. And all it's doing is whenever you're in a situation where you're not using the flash, you're using the sun, you're going to be able to redirect sunlight from above to go underneath the subject to eliminate shadows on the chin, shadows underneath the eyes. If you have a hat on the subject, you can bring light up so it's still going to capture the face and brighten it up. And with that, you're not flashing. It's just a general light that's going at the subject, and it's going to be a lot less harsh and more warm, because most flashes, like I said, they're cold. That's a blue light. It's an unnatural a light, and that it messes with the colors of your portrait. But if you have a DSLR or a camera that has a flash where you can easily put this on, I highly recommend getting a softbox. It helps a lot. If you don't have a softbox and you just have an external you have an external flash, just try pointing it away from the subject. More often than not, the flash will flash back behind you. It'll hit whatever's behind you, and it will come back at you in a much softer way. If you're outside and you do it into the sky, nothing's going to happen. If you're underneath a tree, you might get just a little bit. If you're in a room, you can bounce it off the back wall. If it's a white room, even better, because it's gonna basically act itself as its own softbox. And it's just bringing in the flash. You're still going to get that nice lighting, but it's not going to be as intense. It's not going to cause as many bad shadows on the subject. All right, and our next one, talking about natural lighting. I keep getting ahead of myself, but the sun is an excellent source of light. Photographers often talk about, I want to take pictures during the golden hour, which is usually as the sun is setting, but the light has not completely left the sky. So if the sun sets nowadays at like, I would say about 6 o'clock, your golden hour is going to be from 5 to 6. And that's when the sun's not as intense. It's casting more of a golden glow on everything rather than just a bright yellow. And it's really good for capturing. It's honestly probably what the best lighting there is in the world, as well as the sun's no longer coming from directly above. It's more coming at an angle. It's directly at the subject because you're pretty close to the horizon, so you're going to get less shadows caused from lights from above. You're going to get more light on your subject's face. The sun can provide some really exciting aspects to your background in the form of shadows, whether it's being filtered through trees or if it's an object casting its shadow across the background of your subject. But it can also be very distracting. You just have to, when you pick a location that's outdoors, it's always best to go out to scout it out at the time that you're looking at taking pictures, and making sure that you find a good location so that the sun isn't just going to be surprising you on the day of and you have to scramble to adjust it. You additionally, when you're taking pictures outdoors where the sun is your primary source of light, you need to make sure that the subjects aren't facing the sun, because it's never comfortable for you to take a picture when you have to try to force your eyes open when there's just a lot of glare. And additionally, your camera should not be directly looking at the sun, because it's going to get a lot of glare. It's going to really mess with the colors and the camera itself. It's automatic settings. If you're using kind of the auto mode or the no flash mode, it's going to factor in all that excess light that it's capturing when you're pointing directly at the sun, make your picture just a lot more darker, and it's not going to come out as well as it could. More often than not, you want to angle it so that the sun is kind of off to the, maybe, I wouldn't say 45 degrees, but maybe 60 degrees off to the side of your subject, so that it's going to provide some nice lighting on one side of their face. And then if you have external light, you would bring it coming at the other side of their face to try to capture and combat those shadows. So before we get into example photographs, we're going to talk about formal and informal portraits. Formal and informal doesn't really have to do anything with the emotion of the subject. It has everything to do with the control the photographer has over the portrait. So when you think formal portraits, I think a clean environment, a study or studio, a place in somebody's house, a place where the photographer has been able to go inside, set up the background, set up the foreground, set up the subject exactly how they want it. That's what you're going to get. That's what it really means about formal, is that everything is decided before you've taken the picture. Additionally, or on the flip side rather, informal does not, it leans towards candid, but it does not mean that the photographer has no control, where they're just kind of letting the subject do willy-nilly, but it's where you're kind of almost like it's an adventure where you're seeking out the picture that you want, but you haven't really quite gotten there. I do a lot of very informal portraits. I bring a Christmas bench, we set up in a park, and then once we take that nice formal picture, everything else, I walk them to a tree, we try out some new fun poses. It's every subject's different, and I don't know exactly how I want to take the picture until they're right there. And that's where you're going to get that informality of it all. You still have some control. I still know where I'm going to do. I still focus on the posing. You still focus on the lighting. But really, informal portraits are going to be a lot less, a lot more interesting and unexpected backgrounds. So I have, if I could exit this and go to my pictures. So these are all pictures I've taken just the past couple of days of families and for portrait photography. So we were just talking about formal, informal. This is a formal portrait. They came, I had my little bench set up. I have props. So we have, in this picture, the tree is a background, but everything else here is a prop. So you boxes, pillows, blanket, the bench, it was all brought to reinforce the theme being Christmas. We additionally have, more candid photos here on the in the picture, just having them have fun, smile, wave. And then here, like you were talking about, how can a tree be a prop? Well, this is a good example of how the tree is the prop.
Right.
Because they're interacting with the tree. I had them jump out from behind the tree and we took a picture of them. With kind of this spontaneity, if you infuse spontaneity into a portrait where you're trying to get happy emotions, smiling, excitement, people are going to become more natural with it. I found a lot of people really clam up or kind of freeze up whenever you're just, you tell them, okay, tilt your head down and tilt off to the side and don't smile and look right here and we'll take one picture. Okay, it was perfect, move on. It's just not fun. This little girl was adorable, really nice. So we can talk about this picture for lighting. So we set up the bench in the shade.
Right. Yeah.
And I did it because I didn't want the sun's light to form a lot of blotchiness. And I have a couple of pictures where I did achieve that. But there you can still see there's lots of brightness in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
The sun was still really nice, but the subject itself I was able to control. And because I was focused on the subject, when I took the pictures, a lot of my settings allowed me to capture a bit more light. And so it's not as dark of a picture. This one just a bit too dark, and that's just on me, but I'll keep going. So you can see here, the sun is behind them. We can see on top of their heads, they have a little bit of that stuff, but because they were facing away from the camera or away from the sun, their faces, I was able to, in editing, brighten it a lot up in a more even way. But here now we see the problem with when you take some pictures in direct sunlight is you're going to get one side of the face really dark, one side of the face really light. And the difficulty with this picture in trying to fix this in editing is that if you brighten up the shadows, it's going to look more unnatural because you are editing and putting a more fabricated brightness on one side of her face, and then you have the side of the face that had the sun, and it's very bright. The skin is almost reflecting the light back into the camera. So we have another picture. In this set of pictures, the dad didn't really seem like he was very happy to be here. He never really wanted to smile. But a good thing we can show you in this picture, and something that me and my wife really captured and did this on purpose, was that I actually did angle myself a little bit into the sun so that I could capture this little lens flare, this spectrum in the bottom left-hand corner. So that was caused by the light hitting the lens and just the natural spectrum of light coming from the sun. And it can be fun and unexpected that you include it in pictures every now and then, on some things. Now, there is one thing that I did not do very well in this picture, and I want to see if you can point this out, Rose. In particular, when it comes to the subjects themselves, what did I do? What could I have done better? I'll give you an example. They're missing something.
You're missing something. I don't know what you're missing. What are you missing?
I'm missing their legs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute I said, you focus on their faces, not their legs.
Mm-hmm. So in this situation, if I were to have taken this picture, I would have actually probably gone back and cropped it closer, because when you take pictures, you don't really want to cut them off mid-shin.
Okay.
You'd rather want to cut them off mid-thigh. Okay. When you get too much of their leg, so like here, and it's hard because of the way the gentleman has his hand down, and the the girl has her hands down. You really can't cut it up anymore. So it kind of provides it doesn't work as well. Now you go over to this picture, you have their full body. Dad's still not really smiling, but you get all the subject here, and it works out a little better. And you can kind of tell in this picture, I'm actually off to the side a little bit, so they're not looking directly forward. I've turned them off to the side a little bit, and then go off this way a little bit more.
I like that better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and even this one, I would have rather have a little more, because I cut the girl's shoe in half, and at that point, you might as well just capture the whole thing. So now we have them standing up. So the tree becomes a prop again. We've included it into the picture. It's almost like a Now, I did do one thing I don't like to do, and that is I lined up the woman's face right with the edge of the tree. Yeah, so it has that line going straight out the top and back of her head. It's not as bad. It's slightly off, and it almost runs down the line of her hair. But if I was back in journalism, my teacher would have thrown that picture out and said, done it again. Additionally, the tree that's right behind off of her shoulder is kind of distracting too. It almost looks like the baby's trying to grab it. Mm-hmm. So if I had done it again, I would have probably shifted my angle a little bit, maybe more to the left or to the right, to kind of bring those lines away from behind their head. So nice, cute pictures. The shadow is, the shadow is the shadow. Yeah. Really, when it comes down to it, when I took pictures here, I had to be in the sun because I really wanted this background. And on the other side of this tree, because the tree itself was out of the sun, it was really bare. You didn't have as many leaves from where the tree wasn't in sun. So what I would have really preferred to do here was take this picture, because this picture was taken, I think, about noon or so, maybe 11 or so. Would have take this close to the golden hour or really early in the morning, so that the sun wouldn't be as intense and as bright, and we'd be able to better bring up those the shadows in their face. So here I did a better job. Line's not going directly there. There is a car in the background right there in that little space in between. I would have loved to have the kid's head tilted more, so you didn't have that negative space right between the two subjects, but otherwise pretty good. We got these little girls. They're adorable little children right there. And very nice. Okay, we have another family here. Now, one other thing that I did wrong here was I have this tree right here in the left, right, causing a straight line right through the candy canes. It's, in my opinion, very distracting. If it had been 2 feet to the left, which is just me shifting over just a little bit, would have been a much better picture because it wouldn't have intersected with anything of the subject. Have these nice, different poses, but still that tree distracting me right there. So taking this again, I would have shifted the family closer to the tree to try to eliminate that little space of negative space between, and would have created more of a concise photo.
And on that one, you see a lot of tree. I think I don't know, to me, I would have liked less tree. Like if she stood a little in front of the tree.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely. This is a good example because right now the tree is 50% of the shot.
Yeah.
The prop is too much from the subject. It's almost more than the subject itself. So you're right. It's good. A good eye there is to, and we could do that. We could adjust it in cropping really if you just kind of shift it off to the side. You can always make that adjustment afterwards. But if we did crop this picture because it's already a portrait picture, it's going to end up being too thin of a picture, and then it wouldn't look natural when you try to print it and post it somewhere.
Right.
Cat keys coming inside. So nice. One thing that I like, and it's kind of hard to drill into the subject's head, is to get them to look past the camera, not at the camera. It looks better if they aren't looking directly into the lens. You want to tell them almost like I have a fin on top of my head, look right there. It better details for the eyes, and it kind of helps them all stick in the same area. Let's see. Here's a new family, really nice. But this is going to be this was a session that was kind of difficult because we had already had everything set up and the sun had shifted, and I did not readjust where I had my bench. So this gentleman, I feel bad saying he's bald, but pointing out, but his bald head provided more skin for the light to bounce off, and that just caused extra shadows there.
Right.
And additionally, I'm not quite sure exactly what's happening with the girl's glasses. Very reflective. But this is a wonderful family to work with. I enjoy this. I would have probably picked a better area. You always work with what you have. The tree right here, right through the middle, is a bit distracting. If I had shifted a little bit where you had almost the full tree come up in front, might have been a little good, but they had a great fun with this shoot. And once again, we're still having this issue with this back tree, lots of sun, almost like this is kind of like what you get when you have, if you were to use a flash, but instead of being a cold flash, you used a big warm flash. More pictures. Pretty nice. A little bit distracting with this going into his head, but and he probably could have stood straight up as well. He didn't need to be tilting off to the side as much either.
Well, that to me looks natural.
This looks natural, more natural than like a...
Yeah, because you're being...
right, you're smiling. Yeah, you're not just
being rigid.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, I
enjoying himself.
And this is a good point out here. Between this picture and this picture, the difference in eye level. Yeah. I took this picture at his eye level. I took this picture above his eye level. You can see he had to look up. You get a lot of different shadows, and the background is almost completely different. Granted, it was portrait versus landscape, but if you were to crop it to be exactly the same, it's just a very different look when you're going from straight on versus above.
Yeah.
When you're doing portraits, you also want to be aware of your negative space, filling your negative space with interesting objects that don't detract from the subject. So the trees were beautiful. If we had taken it in front of a lake, that would have been really nice. The way this portrait worked out is made, it would not be good to do this in like some place where there's a lot of people moving around, or a lot of cars or just a busy background.
Right.
So this little bugger was very excited. He started unwrapping some of the gifts as well. And we did this later in the day with shadows, and this is the same tree where we had all those really bright pictures. So from one point of the day to the other, completely different setup. And I like this because we have some light at the bottom of the picture, some sunlight coming in there, but then the rest of the picture with the subject is a little bit more controlled, and we're able to better control that lighting. Dad and Mom did not come prepared to join in on the photo shoot, but we forced them to get in there as well. There's one thing I want to point out that I didn't like that I did later is I left this this box in. We couldn't have cropped out the box because it would have cropped the candy cane, but this would have been something to kind of push out of the way so that it's not just distracting there. It's not enough to really figure out what it is. It detracts from the picture. Now we got more pictures of Dad. This is nice, but I would have shifted this picture in a little bit to cut out this weird concrete structure out here. It clashes with the rest of the natural wooded background. Really nice, but a lot of straight lines. There's this telephone pole that's right here. Another one over here. It's just, my eyes are drawn to that as if it's leading to nowhere. It's kind of like my eyes go to this line and then go up the line and are taken away out of the picture. It's nice. Nice little children. This one's a bit too close up. In fact, I can already tell when you're focusing on your camera, you want to make sure that if you can, you get your focus on the face. Because in this picture, I focused on his chest. His chest looks a lot more in focus than his face. His face is almost a little bit blurry. Wow. Now I have a big family here. They're really nice because they have said they've never done a portrait picture ever. This is their first picture. And they brought their dogs with them, which turned out to be very fun but difficult. This is one of those instances where I told the mother to look off to my shoulder, but she looked too off to the shoulder. Yep. So sometimes you definitely tell them to look at you, but like on your shoulder or on the top of your head. So they're not looking directly into the lens, but they're still looking in the direction of the lens. So we had the moms, we had the dads. I would tell him probably to open up his hands. The closed fist it makes him kind of feel more tense, like they weren't very relaxed when it comes to the picture. Additionally, as well, we probably could have taken this the pillow out because it's distracting. It's no longer adding anything that's right there in the middle. It would have been just better just to have the white, or have them, kind of squeeze together and have the dog on both of their legs. Right. I love this picture. We're off to the side. We have straight lines, but they're not connecting with the subject at all. So it's adding to the background. We have this nice picture of the tree. They love taking this picture in front. They love the tree, so they really want to take a picture of the tree. I would have probably found a bigger tree or brought them closer together, but you work with what you can when it comes to subjects. I don't want to call out names, but the guy on the very far left seemed like he didn't really want to get too close to his brother. So he always had a little bit of space in between when I really wanted them to get close together, almost as if they were all facing each other and then turn towards the camera. But I really liked it. They enjoyed the pictures. The dogs were always very photogenic pictures of the pups. They got one of them kissing each other.
That is a very good picture of the kids.
Yeah. And then we have individual photos. We're using the tree as a prop. Mm-hmm. See, this one's good example. We brought the tree off to the side. Now, I probably would have adjusted the angle a bit more if I paid more attention. So I would have gotten rid of this one little pole. You could have probably hid it behind the tree. Yeah. But at the same time, I could have chosen this angle because we're in the park. There were a lot of cars off to the right as well. So it's a very good chance I did something off to the side. So here I did a little better, almost completely missed it. At this point, I only noticed it because I brought it out. nice picture. Brought the tree in, very good. This one's good, but I would have brought him closer to the tree to try to get that tree out from behind his head. And you can see here more people, pictures, and cars in the background. I needed to crop this just a little bit more to take out this orange, this little thing right there. And mother, oh, I love, this is a very good picture of her. She's very regal, you know, royalty. She had that kind of meant that posing to her.
Yeah.
Got some pictures of the more of the family. We have the line above the head, of course, on the kid with the maroon, and that's that. Now, one last photo shoot to go through. This one we took pictures where the sun was filtering through the trees, specifically because I wanted that speckledness on there. You know, I wanted to make them feel like they were outdoors. You know, if you have them all in the shadow and you have the background, yeah, there's trees and stuff, but you can say, oh, it's under a pavilion. You know, this is, we walked down a trail to get here. I had these really nice, beautiful orange, kind of red tree that just adds that extra splash.
Yeah.
Really nice there. Had I really thought about it, I might have shifted them one side to another, get that red closer to the other red. But still, worked out well. They were really nice. Their dogs, however, not interested in the photos at all. And in some instances, very distracting, because in this picture, yeah, everyone's good, but the dogs are looking off to the side.
Right.
It's a good picture, but your eyes are thinking, okay, what are they looking at? You go off to the side and then poof, you're out of the picture. You know, you want to make sure that things draw you in. Very nice. I liked the red in the background here.
Very nice picture.
Yeah, and with a tree like this, there really isn't too many lines, so you're able to get that good background. Looking back at it again, I may have shifted the people a little bit forward, and then that way you can kind of hide more of this brush pile in the back. But otherwise, really nice. You know, just some more pictures of them walking around. I love to do the walking and laughing pictures because you always seem to get them. They're talking to each other. They're laughing, and you get them in motion, but at the same time they're walking so slowly that it doesn't look like they're in motion. You know, the typical pose with the hand over the head or hands around. Now for this one, would have cropped it just a little bit lower so that you still get the hands with it. Still, otherwise, a great picture. I had him twirl around here. This is nice. And then they went in for the kiss. I'm smiling. This is just the epitome of a candid picture here. Really nice. Now, one thing I would have liked to do better was get her face in focus too. And it's just, I focused, the camera focused a lot on him and his shoulder and did not get as much as her because she was a little bit closer. But, you know, just things that you learn as you go through it and take more pictures. This is why you always take lots of pictures. I really like this. We were on a pathway. The trees kind of almost curved around from the trail that we were on. So there wasn't a lot of straight line stuff here. This rock is a little bit distracting. It does add to the natural feel. I just don't like how you can't see the full rock. It just kind of thinks like it's coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't like the dog.
You don't like which dog? The right one or the left one?
The white one.
The white one? Is it because of its hair?
Sticking his tongue out.
Yeah. Yeah, he was very excited at this point on. He did not put that tongue back in.
Tongue out all the time.
So yeah, and, you know, it's a good example of how the portrait or the prop can distract from the subject. This tree, it actually does pretty well. It's not a straight line. It doesn't come. It comes off to the side. Has nice color to it, and because we put it off to its side, it's not. You still see it adds to the ultimate picture of, like, you know, this being the center of focus here.
But that splash of color in between or behind it, that I think makes it look grayer, you know, and I think it brings out the tree. I think it's very nice.
Oops, I did something. All right. Uh-oh, I broke it. Let's refresh this page here.
No,
Okay.
you erased all your pictures.
I hope not. I sent these to them today. Okay, let's go back out because it's, oh, everything's zooming in. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
We're back into it. Let's let it load up real quick. And I love pictures with trails behind them because it adds to the mystery of the picture. Like, where does that little trail go? You know, where it adds to the adventure motive of the picture. Really would have wished I would have seen this tree coming right out of her head.
Yeah.
But it blends enough into the background that for people who have amateur photography experience, it probably won't be much of an issue. And honestly, if I hadn't been in journalism photography, it would not have been an issue either. It's one thing I always try to look out for, and sometimes you do your best. Yeah, like this, really would have wished I had shifted them just a little bit more, or angled them off to a little bit, so that their head would have been in this brighter area right here.
Right.
Yeah, just right there. But more trees, and sometimes lots of straight lines. But when you're taking pictures of a forest, it's going to be very difficult to try to avoid them. But just always try this. This one's not as bad with this line in between. I don't like the ones off of his head.
Yeah.
Just kind of a completely different color. We did this filtering. Really, it just has to do with the editing of the colors you use. This is more of a warm picture. This is more of a cooler green picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then back here, perfect here. This really isn't much of an issue here. This is off to her side. Really nice. I like, just like earlier, I got both of them in focus. Got her head. He's looking at you. She's looking at him. Really nice. Now, probably could have cropped it so include his hand as well, but it's okay. And that's the last of my picture. So yeah. Well, I hope
pretty cool.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed walking through this, and I would have wished that we would have been able to give you guys more in-depth and on-hand experience with it. But when it comes down to it, it still was. We're making do with what we can in today's sessions.
Hopefully it'll be